2004 was the year I got my first smartphone, a phone that's basically a handheld computer that can shoot video and still photographs and has lots of other extremely convenient and useful functions. That was also the year I stopped buying newspapers. I could get all the news I needed on my phone. The stories on the news sites I started accessing were, of course, far more recent than those in the Japan Times. That was the rival of the Daily Yomiuri, and it was the newspaper I used to buy to read on my commute into Tokyo, just to check how the competition was getting on. So they were far more recent, and I could download content from all major newspapers and broadcasters across the world. And of course, this was all free. The reading experience was different, but I soon got used to reading on a screen measuring about 3 inches by 2 inches. And once news organizations began to optimize their content for online distribution, this became effortless. Now, the circulation of newspapers in most of the world, China and India are exceptions, has declined steadily, with hundreds of titles closing or moving wholly online. But meanwhile, the number of people who read a particular news article has increased exponentially. Newspaper companies in the West have been trying, in vain so far, to come up with a sustainable business model that will, to use a colorful expression, monetize eyeballs. In other words, extract revenue from the owners of the eyes that read their content. The Times of London, for example, has erected a so-called paywall, a system that requires readers to pay a modest amount of money, that's £1 or 130 yen a day, or £2, 260 yen a week to access its content. Now, the Indian students who attended my lecture probably thought that £2 a week is not such a modest sum, given that they pay only 3 rupees, that's 5 yen, for a newspaper. But the situation of the newspaper industry in India is very different from the situation in the West. As British news magazine The Economist, which I hope some of you read, it's an excellent magazine, a few months ago it said, Indian editors' fingers are stained with black ink, not red. This is because the print media industry in India has boomed in the past decade on the back of rising literacy and a buoyant economy. Between 2005 and 2010, the number of newspaper titles published in India jumped by 44% to 2,700. That's 44% in just 5 years, according to the World Association of Newspapers. Whereas newspaper advertising revenues in the West have fallen off a cliff, with such advertising in the United States suffering its worst slump since the Great Depression of the 1930s, in the year to March 10th last year, so-called newspaper ad spend in India was up 30%, which was easily the fastest rise in Asia Pacific. So why has the internet failed to dent the fortunes of the Indian newspaper industry? There are 2 linked reasons. The first has to do with the internet penetration rate in India. Now, does anybody know what the internet penetration rate in India is? Have a wild guess.
3%. 3%.
It's somewhere between them. It's slightly under 7%. So in a country of, 1.3 billion, it's extremely low. The other reason why newspapers continue to thrive in India is that there's a lack of adequate bandwidth, because India's telecoms infrastructure lags far behind that of Japan or the West. So for now, the future remains bright for the Indian newspaper industry. Now, to get back to the situation at the Times of London, students at IIJNM recently conducted an email interview with Richard Lloyd Parry, who's Asia editor of the Times, for our online newspaper, which is called the soft copy. And I hope you can have a look at that. Just type in softcopy.in on Google and you get it. One student asked him this question: with reports of declining sales in response to the introduction of the Times paywall, do you think this initiative was a wrong one? Does the possibility of a reduction in the number of readers your work reaches demotivate you as a journalist? Now, the paywall issue is a bit of a sensitive issue. Everyone is waiting to see whether it works, and it doesn't appear to be doing so. Times Online was registering some 21 million unique users a month to its front page before the paywall went up in June last year, but the figure had dropped like a stone to 2.7 million by October. And that's according to the newspaper's own figures. So I wouldn't have been surprised if Richard had dodged this question, but he didn't. Here's what he said: the loss of online readers when Times Online went behind the paywall was not a decline so much as a precipitous plummet, but everyone always knew that this would be the case. It was built into the calculations, and it isn't in itself proof that the plan was misconceived. I don't feel any less motivated now than when the website was free. The most noticeable effect is that one's stories don't get linked to in the way that they used to, and that's a source of mild regret, but life goes on. I don't know whether this particular model of pay website will work in the long run or not, but someone had to try something, and newspapers will go on trying different formulas until they find one that makes money. In a few years' time, this period in which we find ourselves, when most quality journalism online is free, will seem like a bizarre freak, a brief anomaly in the evolution of the internet. Well, Richard's claim that free online journalism will disappear is obviously debatable. The founder of Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales, said in August last year about the Times paywall, "I think it's not going to last, I think they will give up." And Wales gave an example of what happened when he tried to share a Times Online link with his Twitter followers, who told him that they couldn't open the link. "The Times has made itself irrelevant," Wales said, adding that the story could not be tweeted and it could not be picked up by the blogs. "No one is talking about the Times, I don't think it will work." Well, only time will tell, but what is beyond doubt is that there is a fast accelerating trend in which people are getting their news from sources other than newspapers, and cell phones have become a popular source. The American Pew Research Center's Project for Excellence in Journalism report, which was released at the end of February, found that 33% of cell phone owners in the United States now access news from their phone, and that 28% of internet users in that country have customized their homepage to show news topics of their interest. It also found that 37% of users have left comments on news websites or disseminated what they've read via email and social networking sites such as Twitter or Facebook. This shift in news consumption patterns from print to online has placed an added burden on reporters, who are now expected to take photographs, shoot, edit and upload video, record, edit and upload podcasts, and blog, as well as write stories. The new journalist, then, is a multi-skilled, multitasking jack of all trades who has been described as a platypus, in reference to the bizarre appearance of the Australian mammal that lays eggs and has a duck's bill, a beaver's tail, and an otter's feet. Another email interview that IIJNM students did for the soft copy recently was with one such platypus, Justin McCurry, who is a former colleague of mine at the Daily Yomiuri, who has for the past several years been Japan correspondent of the Guardian newspaper, which is a pioneer in online journalism. Does anybody check out the Guardians? Yeah? You should really have a look if you want to see very good online journalism. Have a look at that site. So the students asked Justin how he saw the future of multimedia. Justin responded that he could, I quote, only see multimedia growing and becoming more sophisticated as newspapers and other media organizations match their previous financial commitment to old-fashioned reporters and editors with investment in a new generation of filmmakers, broadcasters, data specialists, designers, and bloggers. And Justin went on to offer a personal perspective on how his job description has changed to meet the demands of an online audience. 5 years ago, he said, I was working to a single daily deadline. My news stories from Tokyo would appear online at midnight UK time, but only after they had rolled off the presses back in London. Looking back, it was a crazy, lazy way of presenting news to a readership spread across several time zones, all with different areas of interest. Fast forward 5 years, and my job as a foreign correspondent has been transformed. I still write old-fashioned news and features, but I'm expected to supplement those with audio. I've been podcasting for a few years now, blog entries, digital photography, and more recently, video. Thankfully, The Guardian has a great team of editors and producers to knock my raw material into shape, but I've had to learn a lot of new technical skills in a short period of time. I've grasped the opportunity with both hands, but there are times when I wish I could simply focus on writing an insightful article without having to worry about getting decent photographs or video footage. And it means my rucksack now weighs several times more now than it once did. It certainly hasn't done my lower back any good. So I'd like you to think about what features of multimedia journalism make it so superior to its predecessors, which are traditional print and broadcast news. Can you think of any of those features? What gives multimedia the edge on traditional print and broadcast?
Interactivity.
Interactivity, very good, yes. Which you might describe as audience participation. Can you think of some examples of that?
Like if I want to go to more detailed into some topic, quick making research, or have some background information about some.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or to interact with other users,
Mm-hmm.
like comments.
Exactly, yeah.
Check out her.
Sure. Okay, that's one definite advantage. Can you think of any others?
I like the speed.
Speed, exactly. It's instantaneous.
Mm-hmm.
If you check, for example, any decent news organization's website, it'll tell you when it was last updated, and it was often just a minute ago, or the same minute that you're checking it. Whereas, even if you have a big paper like the Yomiuri, which has 14 editions a day, the last edition you read is still going to be a few hours old. You know? So that's another one, instantaneity. Anything else?
It's more visualistic. You can really easily see the information.
Very good, yes. Yeah, richness and depth of content. What was something that I'm sure you became aware of earlier this year, from January, in countries in the Middle East? When you were watching the news?
Once again, please.
Okay, imagine you're watching the news